The greatest tank ace of World War II died with just 52 confirmed kills to his name. You have probably never heard of him. While the world remembers Erwin Rommel and George Patton, while Hollywood makes movies about Sherman tanks rolling across France, the man who destroyed more enemy armor than any other single person in human history remains virtually unknown outside military circles. His name was Dmitry Fyodorovich Lavrinenko, and for decades after his death, even his own country seemed to forget he ever existed. How does someone achieve the impossible, save countless lives, and then vanish from collective memory? The answer reveals something unsettling about how we choose our heroes and why some stories get buried deeper than others. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe. You are not here by accident. Dmitry Lavrinenko entered the world on October 28, 1914, in the village of Bestiansk in the Stavropol region. The vast steppes of southern Russia stretched endlessly around his childhood home, a landscape that would later prove invaluable in teaching him to read terrain like a book. His father worked the land, his mother raised 7 children, and nothing in their modest circumstances suggested that their second son would become a legend. The boy showed an early fascination with machines. While other children played traditional games, Dmitry dismantled clocks, studied the village blacksmith at work, and peppered adults with questions about how things functioned. His teachers noticed an unusual combination of mechanical aptitude and tactical thinking, even in childhood games of war that village boys played in the fields. When collectivization swept through the region in the early 1930s, the Lavrinenko family faced the same upheavals as millions of other rural Russians. Young Dmitry watched as traditional ways of life crumbled and new industrial priorities took precedence. The experience taught him adaptability and gave him an early understanding that survival often depended on quick thinking rather than following established patterns. In 1934, 20-year-old Lavrinenko volunteered for military service, choosing the tank corps over other branches. The decision reflected both his mechanical interests and his intuitive grasp of how future warfare might unfold. The Soviet Union was rapidly modernizing its military, and young officers who understood both technology and tactics were desperately needed. He entered the Ulyanovsk Tank School, where his instructors quickly recognized exceptional talent. Lavrinenko absorbed not just the technical aspects of tank operation, but the psychological dimensions of armored warfare. He studied how crews functioned under stress, how fear affected decision-making, and how small advantages in positioning could determine life or death. His graduation reports described him as methodical, fearless, and possessed of an almost supernatural ability to read battlefield situations. Fellow cadets remembered him as quiet but intensely focused, someone who spent extra hours studying enemy equipment specifications and practicing gunnery calculations. By 1937, he had earned his commission as a junior lieutenant and was assigned to the Western Special Military District. The purges of the late 1930s claimed many experienced tank officers, creating unexpected opportunities for rapid promotion. Lavrinenko found himself commanding increasingly larger units while still mastering the fundamentals of his profession. This early responsibility forced him to develop leadership skills and tactical intuition that would prove crucial in the coming war. June 22, 1941, shattered the relative peace of military exercises and peacetime routine. The German invasion caught the Red Army in the midst of reorganization and modernization, with devastating results. Tank units that had looked formidable on paper were destroyed or scattered within days of the attack. Captain Lavrinenko, now 26 years old and commanding a tank company, experienced the chaos firsthand. His unit retreated eastward with the rest of the Western Front, fighting desperate delaying actions against an enemy that seemed to have every advantage. German panzers, supported by dive bombers and coordinated infantry, rolled through Soviet defenses with terrifying efficiency. But where other officers saw only disaster, Lavrinenko began to identify patterns and weaknesses. He noticed that German tank crews, despite their superior training and equipment, sometimes became overconfident in pursuit. He observed how German formations moved, how they communicated, and where their tactical doctrine created predictable vulnerabilities. During the retreat from the border, his company fought in several small engagements that hinted at his future prowess. While Soviet tank units suffered catastrophic losses throughout the summer, Lavrinenko's crews consistently inflicted disproportionate damage on the enemy before withdrawing. His men began to develop confidence in his ability to find advantages even in seemingly hopeless situations. By autumn 1941, the military situation had stabilized enough for Soviet commanders to begin analyzing what had gone wrong and what might be done differently. Lavrinenko was assigned to a newly formed tank regiment equipped with T-34 medium tanks, the vehicle that would make him famous. The T-34 represented a significant improvement over earlier Soviet tank designs, combining good armor protection with decent firepower and mobility. However, many crews struggled to utilize its capabilities effectively. Lavrinenko approached the machine differently than most of his contemporaries. Where others saw a weapon, he saw a complete system that included terrain, crew psychology, enemy behavior, and mechanical reliability. He spent countless hours training his crew, not just in gunnery and driving, but in communication and split-second decision-making. He studied German tank tactics captured in battlefield reports and developed specific countermeasures for each enemy vehicle type. Most importantly, he began to develop the hit-and-run tactics that would become his trademark. His first confirmed tank kill came during a skirmish near Tula in late October. A German Panzer III, advancing with infantry support, rolled into what appeared to be an empty village square. Lavrinenko had positioned his T-34 behind a partially collapsed building, engine off, waiting. The shot that destroyed the German tank was fired from less than 200 meters, striking the junction between turret and hull. The Panzer exploded instantly, and by the time German infantry responded, the T-34 had already disappeared down a pre-planned escape route. The Battle of Moscow marked the turning point of Lavrinenko's career and perhaps of the entire war on the Eastern Front. As German forces closed in on the Soviet capital in November and December 1941, every available unit was thrown into the desperate defense. Lavrinenko's regiment received orders to hold a sector southwest of the city, where German panzer divisions were attempting to complete their encirclement. The fighting around Moscow differed from earlier engagements. Soviet forces were no longer retreating in disorder, but fighting from prepared positions with better coordination and supply lines. For the first time since the invasion began, Red Army tank crews could fight on something approaching equal terms with their opponents. Lavrinenko transformed this opportunity into a personal war against German armor. He developed an almost supernatural ability to predict where enemy tanks would appear and position his T-34 accordingly. His typical engagement began with careful reconnaissance, followed by a brief, violent attack, and immediate withdrawal to a secondary position. He never fought fair fights, never engaged multiple enemies simultaneously, and never remained in one location long enough for German artillery to target him. His crew, initially skeptical of these unconventional tactics, became believers after their first few successful ambushes. Driver Grigory Puskov learned to navigate by sound and feel, allowing the tank to move with minimal noise. gunner Ivan Moskalenko developed an almost psychic connection with his commander, firing the moment Lavrinenko identified targets. Loader Alexei Tishchenko could replace ammunition types in seconds, switching between armor-piercing and high-explosive rounds as tactical situations changed. During one particularly successful day near Volokholamsk, Lavrinenko's crew destroyed 5 German tanks in less than 3 hours. Each engagement followed the same pattern: careful positioning, patient waiting, devastating surprise attack, and immediate withdrawal. German commanders began to report attacks by ghost tanks that appeared from nowhere and vanished before retaliation was possible. Between November 19th and December 18th, 1941, Dmitry Lavrinenko destroyed 52 German tanks and self-propelled guns. This number, verified through multiple sources, including German unit records captured after the war, represents the highest confirmed tank versus tank kill score achieved by any individual during World War II. The kills came in a remarkable variety of situations. Sometimes Lavrinenko fought defensive battles from prepared positions, using terrain features to create killing zones. Other times he conducted aggressive reconnaissance missions, hunting German armor in territory nominally controlled by the enemy. He destroyed Panzer IIIs and IVs, assault guns, and even managed to knock out several of the newer Panzer VI Tigers that the Germans were beginning to deploy in small numbers. Each victory required perfect coordination between crew members and intimate knowledge of both Soviet and German equipment capabilities. Lavrinenko studied captured enemy vehicles whenever possible, learning their weak points, armor thickness variations, and crew habits. He discovered that German tank crews often became predictable in their movements, following doctrine that emphasized systematic approaches to tactical problems. His most remarkable single engagement occurred on December 15th near Borodino, the same battlefield where Russian forces had fought Napoleon over a century earlier. A German armored column, advancing to support an infantry attack, encountered what appeared to be a single T-34 blocking their path. When the lead tank moved to engage, Lavrinenko destroyed it with a single shot. The second tank, attempting to maneuver around the wreckage, fell victim to a carefully prepared crossfire from a position the Germans had not detected. Within minutes, 4 panzers burned on the historic battlefield while their crews fled on foot. The pace of his success was unprecedented and unsustainable. Lavrinenko was operating at the absolute peak of human performance, making split-second decisions under extreme stress while maintaining the mechanical precision necessary for accurate gunnery. His crew members later admitted that they sometimes felt they were witnessing something beyond normal human capability. December 18th, 1941, began like many other days for Lavrinenko and his crew. Intelligence reports indicated German armor movements in their sector, and the T-34 crew prepared for another hunting expedition. The winter weather was harsh, with snow limiting visibility and making movement difficult for both sides. Around midday, Lavrinenko spotted a German column moving along a road near the village of Goryuni. The target was tempting: several Panzerwaffers escorting supply trucks, apparently unaware of Soviet forces in the area. The attack position was perfect, offering concealment and multiple escape routes. The engagement began normally. Lavrinenko's first shot destroyed the lead tank, causing the column to halt in confusion. His second shot disabled another panzer before the Germans could organize effective resistance. But something went wrong during the withdrawal phase. Whether due to mechanical failure, enemy fire, or simple misfortune, the T-34 became immobilized just as German infantry arrived to investigate the attack. What happened next remains unclear from surviving accounts. Some sources suggest that Lavrinenko and his crew fought to the end from their disabled tank. Others indicate that they attempted to escape on foot, but were caught by German soldiers. What is certain is that Senior Lieutenant Dmitry Fyodorovich Lavrinenko died that day, less than a month before his 28th birthday, at the height of his tactical abilities, and just as Soviet forces were beginning to push the Germans back from Moscow. His crew members also perished, ending one of the most effective tank teams in military history. The T-34 that had carried them through so many successful battles was destroyed by German engineers, denying Soviet forces the chance to recover either the vehicle or the bodies of its crew. The death of Dmitry Lavrinenko should have marked the beginning of his legend, but instead it began decades of inexplicable neglect. While other Soviet tank commanders received immediate recognition and posthumous honors, Lavrinenko's name disappeared into bureaucratic limbo. His remarkable achievements were recorded in unit histories and battle reports, but somehow never translated into public recognition or official acknowledgement. The reasons for this neglect remain mysterious and troubling. Some historians suggest that his rapid success embarrassed commanders who had failed to achieve similar results with larger forces. Others point to political considerations that may have made his story inconvenient for propaganda purposes. Still others believe that his death simply occurred at a moment when military authorities were too overwhelmed by immediate concerns to properly process his achievements. Whatever the explanation, the result was that the most successful tank ace in history became a forgotten footnote in Soviet military records. His family received standard death notifications, but no special recognition or support. His surviving comrades occasionally mentioned his exploits in their memoirs, but these scattered references failed to create broader awareness of his achievements. The contrast with German tank aces is striking. Michael Wittmann, credited with 138 tank kills over a much longer period, became a household name in Germany and remains famous worldwide among military enthusiasts. Kurt Knispel, with 168 confirmed kills, achieved similar recognition. Meanwhile, Lavrinenko, whose 52 kills were achieved in less than a month of combat, remained unknown even to many Soviet military historians. This silence persisted through the remainder of World War II, through the Cold War years, and well into the post-Soviet period. Occasionally, military researchers would encounter references to his exploits in archived documents, but these discoveries rarely led to broader public recognition. The greatest tank ace of the greatest tank war in history remained effectively invisible. The breakthrough in Lavrinenko's recognition came in 1990, nearly 50 years after his death. Glasnost and the opening of previously classified Soviet archives allowed researchers to piece together a complete picture of his achievements for the first time. Military historians, both Russian and international, were astonished by what they discovered. The evidence was overwhelming and indisputable. Unit war diaries, after-action reports, eyewitness testimonies from surviving veterans, and even captured German documents all confirmed the same remarkable story. In less than 30 days of combat, a young tank commander had achieved a level of success that military theorists had considered virtually impossible. On May 5, 1990, exactly 49 years after the end of World War II in Europe, the Soviet Union finally awarded Dmitry Lavrinenko the title Hero of the Soviet Union. The ceremony was modest, attended by military officials and a few surviving veterans who had served with him. His relatives accepted the medal and citation on his behalf, but the moment felt more like a correction of historical oversight than a celebration of heroism. The award opened floodgates of interest in Lavrinenko's story. Military publications began featuring articles about his tactics and achievements. Documentary filmmakers interviewed surviving veterans who had known him. Military academies added his engagements to their case study curricula. Gradually, the man who had been forgotten for 5 decades began to receive the recognition his achievements deserved. However, even this belated recognition felt incomplete. By 1990, most of the people who had known Lavrinenko personally were dead. The Soviet Union itself would cease to exist within a year of his posthumous decoration. His story emerged into a world very different from the one in which he had lived and died, making it difficult for contemporary audiences to fully appreciate the significance of his accomplishments. Analyzing Lavrinenko's methods reveals tactical innovations that were decades ahead of their time. While most tank commanders of 1941 fought like cavalry officers, using armor for frontal assaults and breakthrough operations, Lavrinenko understood that tanks were precision instruments requiring finesse rather than brute force. His signature technique involved what modern military theorists would recognize as shoot and scoot tactics. Rather than engaging in sustained firefights, he positioned his T-34 to deliver devastating surprise attacks before disappearing into cover. This approach required extraordinary map-reading skills, intimate knowledge of local terrain, and perfect timing. One miscalculation could mean death for his entire crew. The preparation phase of each engagement was meticulous. Lavrinenko personally scouted potential battle sites, identifying firing positions that offered both clear fields of fire and concealed escape routes. He studied sun angles, wind patterns, and seasonal vegetation changes that might affect visibility. His crew practiced movement drills until they could relocate their tank in complete darkness or through smoke screens. His gunnery techniques differed significantly from standard Soviet doctrine of the period. While most tank crews were taught to fire rapidly and saturate target areas, Lavrinenko emphasized precision shooting with careful range estimation and ammunition selection. He trained his gunner to engage specific weak points on enemy tanks rather than simply hitting center mass. This approach required more skill but produced much higher kill ratios per shot fired. Perhaps most importantly, Lavrinenko understood the psychological aspects of tank combat better than his contemporaries. He recognized that tank crews, isolated inside their vehicles and dependent on limited periscope vision, were vulnerable to confusion and panic. His ambush tactics were designed not just to destroy enemy vehicles, but to create maximum psychological disruption among surviving German crews. When compared to other tank aces of World War II, Lavrinenko's achievements become even more remarkable. Michael Wittmann, probably the most famous German tank commander, achieved his 138 kills over nearly 3 years of combat service. Kurt Knispel, with 168 kills, fought from 1941 until 1945. Lavrinenko matched significant portions of their lifetime achievements in less than 1 month of active combat. The rediscovery of Lavrinenko's story forced military historians to reconsider several assumptions about tank warfare during World War II. His achievements demonstrated that individual skill and tactical innovation could overcome significant disadvantages in equipment and numbers, contradicting theories that emphasized mass production and numerical superiority over individual excellence. His tactics influenced post-war Soviet tank doctrine in subtle but important ways. Military academies began teaching courses on hunter-killer operations that drew directly from Lavrinenko's methods. The concept of using tanks as ambush weapons rather than assault vehicles gained acceptance among tactical theorists who had previously dismissed such approaches as defensive and unimaginative. International military establishments also took notice. NATO tank training programs incorporated case studies based on Lavrinenko's engagements, using them to illustrate principles of camouflage, fire discipline, and crew coordination. His story became required reading at armor officer schools from Fort Knox to Bovington, where instructors used his example to teach the importance of thorough preparation and tactical patience. Modern tank design has been influenced by lessons learned from Lavrinenko's combat experiences. His emphasis on crew communication led to improvements in intercom systems and battlefield management technologies. His success with precision gunnery contributed to the development of advanced fire control systems that make accurate shooting easier for average crews. The strategic implications of his achievements were equally significant. Lavrinenko demonstrated that small, well-trained units could achieve results previously thought to require much larger formations. This lesson proved particularly relevant during the Cold War, when both NATO and Warsaw Pact forces developed tactics for fighting outnumbered against superior enemy forces. His story also highlighted the importance of individual training and crew cohesion in modern warfare. Military organizations that had emphasized mass mobilization and standardized procedures began to invest more heavily in developing elite units with specialized skills and equipment. The decades of silence surrounding Lavrinenko's achievements have spawned numerous theories and speculations about the reasons for his neglect. Some historians suggest that his success embarrassed Soviet commanders who had failed to achieve similar results with much larger forces and resources. Political considerations may also have played a role. Lavrinenko's individual achievements conflicted with official Soviet ideology that emphasized collective effort and mass heroism over personal accomplishment. His story suggested that exceptional individuals could accomplish more than entire armies, a message that communist authorities might have found problematic. Another theory focuses on the timing of his death and the chaos of the war period. December 1941 was perhaps the most critical moment of the entire Soviet war effort, with German forces at the gates of Moscow and the survival of the state in question. Military authorities may simply have been too overwhelmed with immediate survival concerns to properly document and recognize individual achievements. Some researchers have speculated that Lavrinenko's actual kill count might have been even higher than the official 52. Battlefield conditions made accurate record-keeping difficult, and some engagements may have gone unrecorded. Veterans who served with him occasionally hinted at additional victories that were never officially confirmed. There are also persistent rumors that Soviet authorities suppressed his story because it revealed embarrassing tactical failures by higher-level commanders. Lavrinenko's success highlighted the fact that most Soviet tank units were being used ineffectively during the early war period, a criticism that military leadership might have preferred to avoid. Conspiracy theories have emerged suggesting that his death was not accidental, but resulted from deliberate betrayal by jealous colleagues or politically motivated superiors. These claims lack credible evidence, but continue to circulate among enthusiasts who view his story through the lens of Soviet-era political intrigue. More prosaic explanations focus on bureaucratic incompetence and institutional inertia. The Soviet military's award system was notoriously slow and politically complicated, and Lavrinenko's death may simply have occurred at a moment when his achievements fell through administrative cracks. Since his belated recognition in 1990, Lavrinenko has gradually achieved a place in Russian popular culture that reflects his historical significance. Military museums throughout Russia now feature exhibits dedicated to his achievements, often centered around restored T-34 tanks, similar to the one he commanded. His story has inspired numerous books, ranging from academic military histories to popular novels that dramatize his exploits. Russian authors have used his example to explore themes of individual heroism, institutional failure, and the complex relationship between personal achievement and collective memory in Soviet society. Documentary filmmakers have produced several works about Lavrinenko, though their approaches vary significantly. Some focus on his tactical innovations and military achievements, while others use his story to examine broader questions about how societies remember and forget their heroes. Modern video games featuring World War II tank combat frequently include Lavrinenko as a playable character or historical figure. These games, popular among young people worldwide, have probably done more to spread awareness of his achievements than formal historical works. Social media has played an increasingly important role in preserving and spreading his legacy. Military history enthusiasts share stories about his tactics, debate details of his engagements, and post photographs of memorials erected in his honor. Online communities dedicated to tank warfare history often feature extended discussions of his methods and their relevance to modern combat. International recognition has grown alongside Russian interest. Military museums in the United States, Britain, Germany, and other countries now include references to Lavrinenko in their World War II exhibits. His story has transcended national boundaries to become part of the universal narrative of individual excellence in warfare. Educational institutions have embraced his story as a case study in leadership, tactical thinking, and professional excellence. Business schools use his example to illustrate principles of innovation, teamwork, and performance under pressure. Military academies worldwide include his engagements in their curricula as examples of tactical brilliance. Beyond the tactical achievements and historical significance lies the story of a man whose personal qualities made his professional success possible. Surviving accounts from veterans who served with Lavrinenko paint a picture of someone whose character was as exceptional as his combat abilities. His crew members, in interviews conducted decades after the war, remembered him as a perfectionist who demanded excellence but never asked others to take risks he would not accept himself. Before each mission, he would personally check every mechanical system on their T-34, from track tension to ammunition storage. His attention to detail extended to seemingly minor items like food supplies and winter clothing, understanding that crew comfort affected combat performance. Lavrinenko possessed an unusual combination of technical knowledge and intuitive understanding of human psychology. He could diagnose mechanical problems by sound and identify enemy intentions from barely perceptible behavioral clues. Veterans described his ability to predict German movements as almost supernatural, though careful analysis reveals that his intuition was actually based on meticulous study of enemy patterns and procedures. His relationship with his crew was based on mutual respect rather than military hierarchy. Driver Grigory Puskov recalled that Lavrinenko never gave orders during combat, instead making suggestions that allowed crew members to use their own judgment and expertise. This approach created a team dynamic that functioned more like a precision instrument than a traditional military unit. Personal letters that survived the war reveal a man deeply committed to his family and homeland, but remarkably free from hatred toward his enemies. He wrote about German soldiers with professional respect, analyzing their tactics and equipment without the personal animosity that characterized many wartime accounts. This emotional discipline may have contributed to his tactical effectiveness by allowing clear thinking under extreme stress. Veterans also remembered his sense of humor and ability to maintain morale during the darkest periods of the war. Even as German forces advanced toward Moscow and Soviet resistance seemed hopeless, Lavrinenko could find ways to keep his men focused on their duties, rather than dwelling on their fears. His personal habits revealed someone who understood the importance of mental and physical preparation for combat. He exercised regularly, practiced marksmanship whenever ammunition was available, and studied captured German equipment manuals by candlelight. These activities were voluntary rather than required, suggesting a level of professional dedication that set him apart from ordinary soldiers. Perhaps most remarkably, he never boasted about his achievements or sought recognition for his success. Crew members reported that he sometimes seemed surprised when others praised his tactical abilities, as if he viewed his extraordinary performance as simply doing his job properly. This modesty may have contributed to the long delay in recognizing his achievements, since he never promoted his own accomplishments or sought publicity. The final weeks of his life were spent in almost constant combat, yet veterans remembered him as calm and methodical rather than showing signs of battle fatigue or psychological strain. His ability to maintain peak performance under such conditions suggests reserves of mental strength that few people possess. When death finally came on December 18, 1941, Dmitry Lavrinenko left behind a legacy that transcended his impressive kill count. He had demonstrated that individual excellence, properly applied, could influence the course of history. His story reminds us that behind every great military achievement lies a human being whose personal qualities made extraordinary accomplishments possible. The mechanics of Lavrinenko's success extended far beyond natural talent. His T-34 bore subtle modifications that reflected his understanding of battlefield realities. He reinforced weak points in the driver's vision blocks, added extra ammunition storage in non-standard locations, and insisted on specific track maintenance procedures that reduced mechanical noise during movement. His crew developed communication systems that functioned without radio transmissions, which could be intercepted by German intelligence units. Hand signals, foot taps, and engine rhythm changes allowed coordination during the critical moments when surprise was essential. This silent communication became so refined that his gunner could anticipate targeting commands before they were given. Lavrinenko survived being burned out of tanks on 3 separate occasions before his final battle. Each experience taught him lessons about crew evacuation procedures, fire suppression techniques, and the importance of escape route planning. Veterans recalled his obsessive attention to hatch mechanisms and his practice of memorizing the quickest path out of his tank while blindfolded. His study of German tactics involved analyzing captured enemy manuals, interviewing prisoners, and observing German movement patterns from concealed positions. He identified specific behavioral tells that indicated when German tank crews were nervous, confident, or operating under orders they questioned. This psychological intelligence proved as valuable as technical knowledge about armor thickness and gun capabilities. Surviving members of his regiment provided accounts that illuminated the human context of his achievements. Senior Sergeant Mikhail Volkov, who served in a supporting role, described watching Lavrinenko prepare for missions with ritualistic precision. Every piece of equipment was checked twice, ammunition was sorted by type and condition, and potential battle sites were studied using hand-drawn maps that showed details invisible to standard military cartography. German veterans, interviewed decades later, remembered encounters with what they called the ghost tank that appeared without warning and vanished before counterattacks could be organized. Obergefreiter Hans Müller, who survived an encounter near Volokholamsk, described the psychological impact of fighting an opponent who seemed to predict German tactical responses before they were implemented. Local civilians who witnessed his battles provided perspectives unavailable in official military records. Elderly residents of villages near Moscow recalled seeing a lone Soviet tank that moved differently from others, staying hidden until the perfect moment to strike. Some described hearing the distinctive sound of his T-34's engine, which ran quieter than standard models due to his crew's maintenance techniques. Captured German unit reports, discovered in archives after the Cold War ended, contained references to an unidentified Soviet tank commander whose methods disrupted entire operational plans. German intelligence officers had attempted to identify and eliminate this threat, but their efforts consistently failed due to his unpredictable movement patterns and refusal to engage in prolonged battles. Lavrinenko served alongside other exceptional tank commanders, whose stories intersected with his own. Lieutenant Zinovy Kolobanov achieved fame for destroying 22 German tanks in a single engagement, but his methods differed significantly from Lavrinenko's mobile tactics. While Kolobanov fought defensive battles from prepared positions, Lavrinenko preferred offensive reconnaissance missions deep in enemy territory. His relationship with supporting infantry units was particularly important to his success. Infantry commanders learned to coordinate their movements with his planned ambush sites, creating combined arms operations that maximized the impact of his attacks. These collaborations required trust and communication that developed over multiple successful engagements. The other members of his crew deserve recognition as partners in his achievements rather than mere assistants. Driver Grigory Puskov possessed an intuitive understanding of terrain that allowed him to navigate by landmarks invisible to others. Gunner Ivan Moskalenko developed reflexes that matched his commander's tactical vision, while loader Alexei Tishchenko maintained ammunition supply efficiency that kept their tank operational through extended engagements. Conservative commanders sometimes questioned Lavrinenko's unconventional methods, preferring mass attacks that followed established doctrine. These conflicts reflected broader tensions within the Red Army between innovative tactics and institutional inertia. His success gradually convinced skeptics, but acceptance was never universal among senior officers who viewed his methods as risky departures from proven approaches. Military historians have speculated extensively about how events might have unfolded had Lavrinenko survived the war. His tactical innovations, applied on a larger scale, could have accelerated Soviet advances and reduced casualties during subsequent campaigns. The development of elite tank units using his methods might have shortened the war by months. His potential influence on post-war military doctrine would likely have been substantial. Soviet tank forces struggled with tactical development during the early Cold War period, often relying on mass production rather than qualitative improvements. Lavrinenko's emphasis on crew training and innovative tactics might have created more effective armored forces during the nuclear age. The comparison with Western tank development is particularly intriguing. Allied forces gradually adopted many of the same principles that Lavrinenko discovered independently, but this evolution took years rather than weeks. His survival might have accelerated tactical exchanges between Allied nations and influenced the development of NATO armored doctrine. His methods anticipated many aspects of modern combined arms warfare that became standard decades later. The integration of intelligence gathering, precision targeting, and rapid repositioning became central to military thinking during the 1960s and 70s. Lavrinenko was implementing these concepts in 1941 with equipment far less sophisticated than later generations would employ. The battlefields where Lavrinenko fought have been transformed by decades of development, but careful research can still identify specific locations where his most significant engagements occurred. Near Volokholamsk, local historians have marked sites where his T-34 destroyed multiple German tanks, using surviving terrain features and eyewitness accounts to reconstruct battle sequences. Search teams continue to discover artifacts from his battles, including tank parts, ammunition fragments, and personal items that provide physical evidence of his campaigns. These discoveries allow researchers to verify accounts from military records and veteran testimonies, creating a more complete picture of his tactical methods and their effectiveness. Several museums display items connected to his service, though authentic artifacts are rare due to the circumstances of his death and the decades of official neglect that followed. The Central Museum of the Great Patriotic War in Moscow features a restored T-34 similar to his tank, along with documents and photographs that illustrate his achievements. Military historians and enthusiasts regularly visit the sites of his battles, treating these locations as places of pilgrimage that connect them to a legendary figure from military history. These visits often reveal additional details about terrain usage and tactical positioning that enhance understanding of his methods. Contemporary military researchers have applied advanced analytical techniques to study Lavrinenko's achievements, using computer modeling and statistical analysis to understand how he achieved such remarkable results. These studies confirm that his success resulted from systematic application of sound tactical principles rather than luck or exaggerated claims. Ballistic analysis of his engagements reveals consistent patterns in shot placement and range selection that demonstrate exceptional marksmanship skills. His preference for flank shots at medium ranges maximized the penetrating power of his T-34's gun while minimizing exposure to return fire from German tanks with superior frontal armor. Psychological research has examined the mental qualities necessary for sustained high-level performance under extreme stress. Lavrinenko displayed characteristics associated with elite performers in any field: intense preparation, emotional control under pressure, and the ability to process complex information rapidly while making life-or-death decisions. Weather analysis of his battle dates shows that he often fought during conditions that limited visibility and mobility, factors that should have reduced his effectiveness. Instead, he used these conditions to his advantage, suggesting an exceptional ability to adapt tactics to environmental circumstances that worked against less skilled opponents. Modern tank crews study Lavrinenko's methods as examples of timeless tactical principles that remain relevant despite technological advances. His emphasis on preparation, positioning, and crew coordination translates directly to contemporary armored warfare, where individual tank crews still face situations requiring the same fundamental skills he demonstrated. Military academies worldwide include his engagements in case studies that illustrate principles of leadership, tactical innovation, and performance under pressure. These lessons extend beyond tank warfare to broader military applications, making his story valuable for officers in all combat specialties. Advanced military simulators now incorporate scenarios based on his battles, allowing modern tank crews to experience the decision-making challenges he faced. These training programs help develop the same intuitive understanding of terrain, timing, and enemy behavior that made him so effective. The adaptation of his methods to modern equipment demonstrates the enduring value of his tactical insights. Contemporary tanks possess far superior technology, but the basic principles of positioning, surprise, and crew coordination remain unchanged from his era. Questions remain about the exact circumstances of Lavrinenko's death and the fate of his final tank. Some accounts suggest mechanical failure, others point to overwhelming enemy forces, but no definitive explanation has emerged from available evidence. The ambiguity surrounding his final moments adds to the mystique of his story. Disputes continue among historians regarding his precise kill count, with some researchers claiming higher numbers based on German unit reports and Soviet battle summaries that may not have been properly correlated with official records. The fog of war makes absolute verification impossible, but the confirmed 52 victories represent only documented cases rather than complete totals. Theories about his extraordinary battlefield awareness have ranged from natural talent to systematic training methods that were never fully documented. Veterans who served with him described an almost supernatural ability to predict enemy movements, but careful analysis suggests this resulted from intensive study and pattern recognition rather than mystical powers. The search for his remains and those of his crew continues, driven by both historical interest and family desires for proper burial. The chaotic nature of the battlefield where he died and subsequent construction in the area have complicated these efforts, but advances in archaeological techniques maintain hope for eventual success. Lavrinenko's story has inspired numerous works of fiction that use his achievements as the basis for exploring broader themes about heroism, sacrifice, and the individual's role in historical events. These creative interpretations, while not historically precise, have helped introduce his legacy to audiences who might not encounter military history through academic sources. Video game developers have featured him in multiple titles focusing on World War II tank combat, allowing players to experience tactical challenges similar to those he faced. These interactive recreations, despite their entertainment focus, often teach genuine lessons about armored warfare tactics and historical context. The modeling and collecting community has embraced his story, creating detailed recreations of his T-34 and the engagement sites where he fought. These hobbyist activities preserve technical details and historical knowledge that might otherwise be lost, contributing to broader understanding of his achievements. Online communities dedicated to military history regularly discuss his tactics, debate details of his service, and share newly discovered information about his life and career. These digital forums have become repositories of collective knowledge that supplement official historical records. The rediscovery of Lavrinenko's achievements illustrates how individual excellence can be obscured by larger historical narratives that emphasize mass movements and institutional factors over personal accomplishment. His story serves as a reminder that history is shaped by individuals whose contributions may not be immediately recognized or properly documented. His tactical innovations demonstrate that effective military solutions often emerge from practical experience rather than theoretical study. The most successful approaches to complex problems frequently come from practitioners who understand both the technical requirements and human factors involved in their implementation. The delayed recognition of his achievements highlights institutional failures that can result in the loss of valuable knowledge and inspiration. Organizations that fail to identify and preserve examples of exceptional performance deprive future generations of learning opportunities and role models. Most importantly, Lavrinenko's story affirms that individual skill, properly applied, can influence events far beyond what might seem possible given available resources and circumstances. His legacy encourages others to pursue excellence regardless of whether immediate recognition follows, trusting that true achievement will eventually find its place in history. The tank ace who was forgotten for 50 years has finally taken his place among history's greatest warriors, not merely for what he accomplished, but for how he accomplished it with skill, dedication, and quiet heroism that exemplified the best qualities of his generation.